So, next video is Chapter 3 in 10 Boys Who Made a Difference, Martin Luther. Martin peered round the corner of a road in Mansfield in Saxony. "Are there any goblins coming?" his brother asked from behind. He was younger than Martin and quite happy to let his older brother go first, especially in the dark. "No," whispered Martin, "I think it's safe." But even though he sounded confident, he was shaking and every bit as scared as his brother. "What's that?" he screamed when something touched his leg. "It was a cat," the other boy said. "I thought you'd seen it coming." "I don't want to go past the church," Martin announced. "We'll go home the long way." "I don't like going past the church either," his brother agreed. "There are spirits there and they sometimes run away with the children, especially boys." "Who told you that?" "That's what someone told a gang playing near the church. He said that spirits took boys away to work for them, and that they could never get back out of the underworld. They held prisoners forever and ever and ever." "I think that's nonsense," the older boy said, but he decided never to go near the church on his own, just in case. He didn't want to risk being a prisoner in the underworld. As he lay in bed that night, Martin thought about goblins and churches, about spirits and priests. Somehow he couldn't separate them out. "I wish there weren't so many things to be afraid of," he thought. "The priest scares me most of all because he says boys are bad and can't go to heaven, and that they sometimes spend hundreds of years in purgatory." "What is purgatory?" he asked his father the following day. "It's where we go when we die," the man explained, "and we are there until we can go to heaven." "But I want to go straight to heaven when I die," Martin said. "You'll not do that, son," Mr. Luther said sadly. "You've already done too many bad things. Only those who live nearly perfect lives go straight to heaven. And I suppose they're all popes and cardinals and archbishops." "What about bishops and priests?" asked Martin. His father shook his head. "I expect most of them will go to purgatory." Martin was near to tears when he asked, "How do you get out of purgatory?" "When people who are still alive say enough masses or give enough money to the church," was the upsetting answer. "Are you awake?" his brother asked. "Yes." "What are you thinking about?" Martin told his young brother about his thoughts, but this only made his young brother ask more questions. "What happens if families don't say enough masses? Do people have to stay in purgatory forever?" "I suppose so," Martin said. "But what if Mum died and Dad was killed down the mine and there was nobody to say masses for us?" Because Martin was beginning to feel really quite scared, he decided to pretend he'd fallen asleep and not heard what his brother had said. He grunted, turned round and lay awake for hours thinking. "I wonder if we've said enough masses for my baby brothers and sisters who have died," he found himself worrying. "Maybe they're still in purgatory." The next morning Martin was slow to get up and his father was not at all pleased. "You're a lazy, lazy boy," he said, taking the leather belt off his trousers. "I've worked hard for you and all you can do is sleep. When we came to Mansfield we had hardly a penny. I worked my fingers to the bone to feed and clothe you. I work so hard that I own the mine now. And what do I get? An eldest son who can't get out of his bed in the mornings." Martin knew better than to dodge his father's belt, so he took his punishment without flinching. "Go and help your mother gather wood," Mr. Luther said as he put his belt on again. Martin waited until he was out of sight of his home before rubbing where his father's belt had hit him. But he didn't risk stopping long, for he knew his father would come after him to check what he was doing. He guessed where his mother would be in the forest because a large tree had blown down and there was plenty of wood to be had from it. "You've come to help," his mother said when she saw him. "Dad sent me," Martin told her, "but I would have come anyway." He enjoyed collecting wood for the fire. "Do you know something, Mum? Wood heats you up twice." "What do you mean?" his mother asked. Martin explained. "It heats you up the first time when you're gathering it, and it heats you up again when it burns on the fire." "You're an intelligent boy," the woman said. "No wonder your father wants you to go to school." It was such a long walk to school that at first Martin was carried part of the way there. "What's school like?" his younger brother asked him in bed when they had time to talk. "It's been a terrible week," Martin explained. "The teacher is so cross. He saves up his beatings all week and gives them on a Friday. I got 15 lashes today." "That must have been sore," his brother said sympathetically. "Why do you think I'm laying on my side?" Martin spat. "The teacher says I'm so bad that I'll never get to heaven." That was the beginning of another sleepless night, and it wasn't just because he was sore from the beating. After school Martin went on to study at university. "I'll be a lawyer," he told his father, "and you'll be proud of me." But a thunderstorm changed his plans. While he was studying law he went out riding one day and a furious storm suddenly crashed right overhead. Lightning forked this way and that, blinding in its brightness. "Help me, Saint Anna," terrified Martin cried, "and I'll become a monk." He did survive, and he did become a monk, though his father was not best pleased. But even though he was a monk, the fear of spending forever in purgatory still plagued the young Luther. "What can I do to make myself good enough for heaven?" he asked himself over and over again, until his mind was nearly bursting. "I'll say the Lord's Prayer 50 times each morning, or I'll only eat one small meal each day, or I'll wear the scratchiest horsehair vest I can find, or I'll get up at 2 each morning and pray until daylight," he thought, and tried them all. He even went to Rome, where he found a building that was supposed to be Pilates' house. When he reached it, Martin got down on his knees, crawled up the 29 steps, and stopped to pray on each of them. "It doesn't matter what I do," he wept afterwards. "Nothing makes me feel as I will escape purgatory." He was nearly out of his mind with worry. One day while Luther was studying, an amazing idea dawned on him. "Can this be true?" he said to himself, absolutely brain blown at what he was thinking. "Can it possibly be true that we are saved by faith and not by works?" He went from verse to verse in his Bible, shaking with excitement. Tears of sheer relief flowed down his face. He brushed them off impatiently because they were stopping him from reading the Bible. "It's true," he said softly. He slid from his high stool and nearly fell. His legs were wobbly with relief, and he felt as though he had lost half his weight. "It's as if I've been carrying a huge burden that's suddenly gone." Sitting down, he thought through what he'd discovered. Had anyone come into the room, they would have wondered what had happened. The serious monk Martin Luther was 1 minute wiping tears from his eyes and the next jumping into his Bible, then sitting down and smiling more broadly than he had done for years, then striding about saying over and over again, "It's true. Praise the Lord, it's true." Over the months that followed his discovery, Martin did a great deal of studying and thinking. "The Bible absolutely clearly says that we are saved by faith in God," he said to himself. "So why is it that I studied and worried for years and didn't see the truth?" The answer to that question really upset him. "I didn't see the truth because the church has taught me lies all of my life." Luther shook his head at the thought, then thumped his desk with his fist. "Every day of my life I've worried about how I'd get out of purgatory, and now I discover that there is no such place. It's not in the Bible at all." He strode about the room thinking aloud. Why has the church lied? Why? Why? There can only be one reason, that it wanted everyone to be afraid, that it wanted to control us through fear. His eyes blazed, and it's still doing it. What am I to do? In 1517 there was an announcement made in Luther's church and in every other church as well. The Church of the Holy Father, the Pope, is to be rebuilt. As this will cost a great deal of money, the Holy Father has most graciously decided that there will be a sale of indulgences. Anyone buying an indulgence will have their sins or a loved one's sins forgiven and will therefore go to heaven. Martin heard this with astonishment. His head spun as he left the building. "What's an indulgence?" he asked himself. "It's only a piece of paper saying your sins are forgiven. How can people believe that by paying money for a piece of paper God will take them to heaven? Surely ordinary people will have more sense than to believe that." Suddenly he stopped, shocked. "No, they won't. They'll do just what I did for years. They'll believe it because the church says it. That's terrifying. People will pay out money they can't afford to go to a heaven that they'll never see." Luther spent a long time in his study preparing a document he knew would cause a storm. When he'd finished writing, he'd made up a list of 95 ways in which the church's teaching was not from the Bible, most of them to do with purgatory and indulgences. He took the long sheet of paper, some nails and a small hammer, and set out for the castle church in his town of Wittenberg. When he arrived at the church door, he didn't go in. Instead, he nailed the list to the door. News of what he'd done soon spread through the town. "I wonder if Luther's right," one or two people said. "How dare he say that the money we've spent on indulgences won't take us to heaven," others fumed. And a number worried and wept because they just didn't know what to think. Before long, news of what Martin had done reached the Pope, who was not at all pleased with his monk. "Bring him here," he demanded. "There'll be trouble if people listen to what he's saying. Bring him here and I'll sort him out." When the Pope's order arrived, Martin Luther refused to go to Rome. There is no such person as a Pope in the Bible, he told a friend, and we're certainly not told to obey a man rather than God. So the Pope can say what he likes, but I'm not jumping to attention and obeying him. "That's dangerous thinking," his friend said seriously. Then he smiled. "But it's true. Splendidly true. For so long, the church has lived in fear of popes, and now we can be free from them." As Luther's teaching became well known, people began to gather around him, who already thought as he did. Some had been influenced by an Englishman called John Wycliffe, who lived over 150 years before Luther. Nearer home, Jan Hus had made the same discovery in Prague a century later. Followers of Wycliffe and Hus were encouraged that Martin Luther stood up strongly for Bible truths, and some of them were among a group of people who met with Martin on 10th of December 1520 for a bonfire. Having gathered together many books of church teaching which they knew to be untrue, they burned them publicly. "The church has led us far from the truth," one man who was enjoying the sight of the burning book said to his neighbour, "and change has been brewing quietly for years, but it will come soon now. I believe tonight marks a big step in the process of Reformation." "What is Reformation?" his son asked. "It's change, son," his father said. "It's a change that will come as we read the Bible rather than listen to the wrong things the church has been teaching." The fire blazed brightly as book after book was thrown on, and the glow reflected on the faces of those who had the courage to stand near it. "There's an excitement in the faces," Luther thought, "and there's joy too, the joy of being free of the fear of purgatory and sure of the hope of heaven." So that is a chapter on Martin Luther, and I hope you are enjoying these.